So I entered the field of psychology to do my bachelor's with a lot of expectations and dreams. I believed that finally I will find a community where I will feel belonged, understood, and accepted. I thought that people who study or work in mental health, they have to be empathic, relatively non-judgmental, and different in a good way than those in other fields because psychology studies human emotion, human behavior, and human experience, and also studies how collectively our experiences influence others and their well being. I used to believe that authority figures in this field will also be different than the ones from other fields, but it didn't take a long time for my expectations to falter. I wasn't expecting them to be saintly, but I expected them to behave in a way that aligns with what we studied. One thing we are taught in psychology is that we need to learn to self reflect and to develop self awareness. But those people in psychology with higher credentials, or even someone who has a published journal article in this field, manage to disappoint my expectations very soon. If you're intellectually arrogant, you think that you are superior to someone else based on your knowledge, based on your intellect about something. You think, I'm the only one who can speak about this subject here because I'm qualified to do that. The difference between confidence and arrogance is a confident person feels good and proud about what they have achieved, who they are, their abilities, their talents, what they do, their skills, their gifts. They celebrate themselves, but it has nothing to do with comparing themselves to someone else or someone else's achievements, someone else's knowledge, and thinking, oh, I am better than this person. On the other hand, an arrogant individual will always need to compare themselves to others. So, the main difference between confidence and arrogance is an arrogant person has a hierarchical view of themselves in relation to others, and of course, they are the superior one. Take thesis supervisors for an example. I don't know about your experience with thesis supervisors, but in my experience, they have a double standard. If we send a thesis to be reviewed like 2 weeks prior to the deadline and they won't respond, it's not their fault. But if we as students don't manage to send it within, I don't know, like a week before the deadline, then it is indeed our fault. The reason is that they are busier, their lives are more preoccupied, than the students because they have a lot of work to do. But I don't care, even if that's the case, because you are paid to do this. If we get late, we are bad students. But if they get late, oh, life's hard, man. Where's the self awareness? Where's the accountability? And where's the self reflection? I didn't think that those who study psychology or work in the field had it in them to be corrupted, to be cruel, to be misunderstanding, to humiliate someone, to be evil, or to even crave power and to exploit others. I know they wouldn't be perfect or saintly because, as I said before, because we are all flawed human beings, but I thought they would definitely be better. I've seen psychology professionals tell their interns to not have an attitude when their interns disagree with them or critique their approach to a client case. Lecturers calling students idiots in front of a whole class when they're unable to answer a question. When supervisors aren't responsive enough and students point out their behaviors, students are blamed for it and the administration encourages their behavior. And why is that? Because after all, they have more credentials, so they have to be respected. After all, those people with higher credentials feel entitled to that respect. When you get to the top, you don't earn the right to treat others as garbage or to speak however you want to or to condescend others. You only earn the right to feel confident in what you have achieved. Speak about what you know, about what you learned, and practice what you have learned. Practice your craft honorably. You don't get to earn the entitlement like to feel like you're a superior human being. Your degrees, your knowledge in a particular subject, and your certifications don't earn you the right to derogate anyone your students, or someone from another field. Psychology encourages authoritative leadership. It's a combination of competence, empathy, and boundaries. Authoritative leaders lead by example and not control. They set limits, but they also provide enough support, motivation, inspiration, and insight. They are wise and compassionate leaders. But authority figures I've met in psychology don't really align with any of it. The aims of psychology are to describe, explain, predict, and influence or change human behavior. See, I don't know how I feel about you trying to change someone else's behavior while yours is extremely toxic. For a field which analyzes and examines the root causes of mental pathology or psychological problems in general, this sort of toxic behavior is contradictory and ridiculously paradoxical. We learn about toxic personalities, we learn about manipulative behaviors and how it affects others. We learn about how it can traumatize others. We learn about critical thinking. And psychology encourages us to think critically, stand up for ourselves, be assertive, stand our ground, speak up for what we believe in, be confident in yourself. But there's a catch though. You are allowed to be assertive, yes. Be confident in yourself. You have to expose and question toxic systems, expose unfair treatment or unjust behavior. You can speak up and stand up yourself until you are speaking against or criticizing or questioning an authority figure in the field. The exact field that studies toxic behavior, acting toxic, it seems pretty paradoxical to me. Academics, but also professionals, but especially academics, lack intellectual humility. They claim that we are the real experts. And coaching is pop psychology. I agree sometimes there are coaches who charge extortionate amounts, like very much money for no reason. But that is a bad coach. Just like a psychologist who has all the right credentials, and you go to them for psychotherapy and you learn that they suck. That is a bad therapist. Just like there are bad coaches, there are bad therapists. So passing exams, training, and having higher scores can get you to the top. But that doesn't necessarily mean you will be a great psychologist. Someone who cares enough for the client or their well being, someone who actually cares about someone's well being, someone who can actually build a good rapport enough with the client to connect, to feel seen and heard and heal. Clinical detachment in psychology has a purpose, and I can understand that. But there are many therapists that feel like they're devoid of emotion, and when it goes overboard, you feel almost like a clinical case, and the psychologist is the surgeon. You're just a great case analysis to get knowledge and to get money. I was told by a therapist that I should be forgiving a traumatizer in my life just because she's a family member. Aren't you supposed to not project your opinions and beliefs and your advices on your clients? Aren't you only supposed to guide them to figure out what's best for them? If it's not peer reviewed, it's worthless. But ironically, a lot of therapy techniques or therapy models were non peer reviewed before they were studied. There's this cynical, disdainful attitude towards non evidence based healing. But mindfulness was a spiritual concept originated in Buddhism about 2,500 years ago. ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, uses concepts of radical acceptance, radically accepting experience, thought, emotion, and observing them instead of judging them, adapted from Buddhism. CBT was influenced by Stoicism. This is the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus saying, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He also said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things." Does this sound familiar? This is exactly the root or the base of CBT. Socratic questioning that I use by professionals right now, asking open-ended questions instead of giving fixed, direct answers, originated from Socrates, who gave lectures to his followers in this manner in ancient Greece. It's unscientific until it isn't, and psychology adopts it. You let a traditional psychologist or an academic practicing, like the scientist practitioner model, hear the words spiritual conversation or healing through spirit, or I don't know, chakra healing, holistic healing. And listen, they're not willing to listen to you. You could see them laughing like they're at a stand-up comedy show. That is condescension. That is not critique. Sometimes, and for some people, the most important thing in healing is the sacredness or the sanctity of their approach to healing, what it means to them. Some people choose a more spiritual or even an integration of psychology and spirituality, psychospiritual approach to healing because it's more meaningful to them. And sometimes it's not really evidence based, or sometimes it's not even researched thoroughly. However, research in social science is already subjected to a problem, and that is the replicability issue. It's difficult to replicate studies across cultures or even among like the same culture. Social science is clearly different from natural science or the hard sciences, and some people in the field of psychology hate, especially academia, they hate hearing that, and they pretend that it's not that different. You need to stop being in denial about it because in natural sciences we're measuring tangible things, but human beings and abstract concepts and processes in the mind and human experiences, which psychology aims to measure, that's pretty difficult to measure. We make these reliable and validated questionnaires to empirically prove a certain psychological stance. Most research is based on self-reports. So you read a couple of questions in a validated questionnaire and you answer them. Maybe it's a personality questionnaire. I don't know. It measures your moods, your relationships, your experiences in relationships. But a questionnaire doesn't allow you to really say what happened or how you actually feel. It's rigid. And human experience is more nuanced. I agree. We need structure, we need empirical evidence, sure, but I think we need to also understand that we are human beings, not things like atoms, cells, forces that are consistent, that natural science study. We are messy individual beings with unique ways of thinking, behaving, and complicated emotions and personalities and experiences. We are influenced by social norms, morals, and trauma and stress, as well as like mood at the time of taking the study, but also like in general. And it feels too simplistic to just reduce them to statistics and p values. And I've always believed that in a psychology research paper or a journal article, the limitations part should be at the beginning, not at the end. Even if the standard error is low, it doesn't necessarily make the research more accurate. Even if your statistics are very neat and pure, it doesn't guarantee real world applicability. It was not until I did a research or two that I realized how unreliable psych research is from the comments I received from participants. And mind you, those were validated questionnaires, and they were telling me after completing those questionnaires, well, you gave me these questions, and there were these answers here, but what I truly feel or think, my experience is not truly contained in these answers. And it is true. I don't know about your academic experience with psychology, but here in Sri Lanka, um, psychologists and psychology academics they discredit qualitative research a lot, and they do not allow students to really conduct qualitative research. So they really like quantitative research. Psychology is a social science. It deals with abstract concepts, like I mentioned earlier. It's about human beings, about how the mind works, human experience. We study them, we look at what works and what processes go within the human mind to find out what we can do to help certain dysfunctional patterns and negative conditions. But more also, we try to explain it, we try to understand it, not just explain. So, how the heck are you supposed to do that without enough qualitative research that helps us to gain insight and understanding to real, raw human experience, to understand the client's mind and experience? This highlights that psychology really doesn't care about the client's well being. They would definitely choose status and power, and while trying to prove your naysayers wrong, who say that psychology is not a real science. They completely dismiss actual lived experiences. I was exposed to emotionally neglectful, invalidating people from other fields, and then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to study psychology. But now that I think about it, I thought that psychology would be like the good place,
The good place.
you know, the one where everyone is thoughtful, kind, empowering, like a combination of ethics and morality. You should watch The Good Place if you haven't. However, it turns out the ethical code of conduct and the so-called morality and humanity only applies to the participants of psychological studies and to the clients who pay them, not to each other or their students. No, no.
Okay, guys, so let me know what your personal experience has been with the psychology community. Perhaps you worked in the field of psychology or like mental health, or you studied in the field, or you are currently studying in psychology, or you have been to a therapist. How has your experience been with psychology professionals or academics? Whatever it is, I would love to know about your opinions and your experiences in the field. And I will see you in my next video.